yes, you could blame Gary, and if you're a Gary fan, you could probably blame Richie. So, as I said, it takes two to tango in those relationships.
Now we're getting set for a co-driver only practice session, and this will be incredibly important given the racing that we have here tomorrow and the weather that's forecast. What will teams be looking to do, and co-drivers in particular, to get out of this session?
Just a little bit of a settling period, Jess. It's actually dry at the moment, so the first few laps of this session actually be really important for the co-drivers, because it may actually be the only drive they get today that's going to actually give them a proper feel of the car. When you're driving in the wet, the grip level's so low, it's hard to get a real grasp of what the car's like. So these early laps when the circuit is dry will be very important for the whole weekend.
Well, as the cars get ready to roll out of pit lane, we'll hand it over to Neil Crompton, who's relocated to the commentary box.
Morning again to you, Jess. Good morning, everybody, and looking forward to seeing cars get underway out there now for the first of 3 practice sessions for today. It is the Penrite Oil Sandown 500 this weekend, races 28, 29 and 30 of the championship, our second last event of the 2019 Virgin Australia Championship season. Grey skies at the moment. There's been some rain overnight, welcome rain in Victoria. Everybody knows the difficult state of affairs in terms of the drought across wider Australia. So we're celebrating the sight of some rain. It will make things trickier for some of the drivers in these supercars today. Here's a look at the detail around this historic racetrack. Thanks to Virgin Australia. Sandown, 3.1 kilometres. Wide open throttle here is just over 50% of the lap. The horse racing complex is in the middle. It's owned by the Melbourne Racing Club, and we've been coming here since 1964. It's been a popular venue. We've seen some huge moments. Rounds of the World Sports Car Championship have been held here. The late, great Manuel Fangio was here also in the 70s with a huge crowd and some of the finest moments of racing involving the likes of Peter Brock, Larry Perkins, Alan Moffat and many more over a long period of time have etched their careers here and made this place home. So you can see that it's a highly complex racetrack at the southern end, and in particular it's very slow across the top of the curbs through 2, 3 and 4, but a high-speed run up the back straight where you replicate the speed that you do on the front straight. It's about 265 kilometres an hour, and the ride down the hill, in fact squaring up at the end of the back straight and determining how far you can get into that back straight and how hard you can drive down the hill is a big determinant in the way in which you put lap speed together here. And it's been modified, and when Mark gets back into the commentary box, he's been instrumental in some of the engineering changes around that. We'll explain them in greater detail. But a lovely racetrack, a fast racetrack, and a great place for us to race this weekend. We've got 500 kilometres of racing on Sunday, not to be underestimated around this racetrack. Like Bathurst, it's 161 laps. And unlike years previous, normally this event precedes the Super Duke Auto Bathurst 1000. But this weekend and this season, it's a little bit out of order by comparison to what's been done in the past. So we're looking here at Alex Premer. Bathurst 1000 victory for him. 37 years of age, a former Macau Grand Prix winner. He's also a winner in A1 Grand Prix, sports car hero as well. And Pertec Enduro Cup winner in 2016. He did that with Shane Van Gisbergen. Now Luke Youlden's gone off in car number 9. And this is the car that Mark made reference to colour-wise in the studio a few moments ago, sporting the colours of the JGS BMWs and celebrating the wonderful career of Jim Richards, who is a true legend of the sport. So for some reason, early in the days, Lukey's fired off down here. So we've got the replay up to have a look at exactly what's gone on. Cold tyres at Sandown and a slippery curb, and it's very easy for that result to happen at turn 4. It's actually lucky he didn't wipe it on the wall down there. Car number 97 is Garth Tander, and the expectations are high for him this weekend, because when you look at his history here, and in fact it's the same at the Gold Coast and at Bathurst, one of the reasons why he was chosen to be in the Red Bull Holden racing team was his prowess at this location. So expect to see him looking pretty strong out there. He's in car number 97. He's sharing it with Shane Van Gisbergen. He's the 2007 Supercars champion, a 3-time Bathurst 1000 winner. He's also been a winner of the Pertec Enduro Cup. He did that in 2015 with Warren Luff. At Sandown here, he was the winner in 2016, and if you recall, there was a mudguard flailing on that car, and there was a big question mark at the time as to whether or not it was going to get home or whether he'd get a mechanical black flag. He did get home. He's had a couple of poles here as well. He'll be paired up with Shane Van Gisbergen. Craig Lowndes at the helm in his natural habitat, coming out of the final corner in car number 888. He's a 7-time Bathurst winner. Isn't it extraordinary? And a Pertec Enduro Cup winner last year. And he's driving with Jamie Whincup on screen. Jamie, a 7-time champion. What a combination, and the expectations are high for them, particularly given the form here last year for Whincup, who was extraordinary at this location. So, having a look at those key roles as co-drivers for the drivers that occupy the high-stress seats in the field, because they're also not only racing for glory this weekend, they're also trying to protect their partners' championship hopes as well. And fourth in the championship as Mark Scaife comes back into the commentary box. Fabian Coulthard, and he's driving with Tony D'Alberto. Good morning again, Mark.
Hey, Crompo, and it was interesting straight away. The grip level looks low, doesn't it? We see a lot of cars sliding around. I heard you make the comment there with Luke Youlden having a spin at the top end of the track at turn 4. And I saw some wheel spin with Garth Tander coming off that curb at turn 4. So although it looks reasonably dry, very, very cold conditions. And had a lot of rain here over the last couple of days. So if you go off the road, there will be drama. You just picked up on Tony D'Alberto on board with Fabian Coulthard. He was our Development Series champion in 2007. He's actually always very tradesmanlike and strong with the way he's going about his business, driving with Fabian. He's looking like he's betting in some brakes there at the moment. He's doing a lot of accelerating and braking. You can see the front of the car up and down. Yep, there you go. So that's on board now with Tony. And that'll just be part of their program in the session, where they're just sorting out what style of brake pad they're using and making sure they can warm those brake rotors up and get that car back into the pit area and give him some proper laps in a second. Greg Murphy's down in the pit lane with a host of our normal reporters. Murph, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Scaife. You just talking before about that grip level, and it's changeable, very changeable, quite intermittent. We've got some reasonably heavy raindrops. It's not raining, they're not showers, but it is coming and going, and there's enough to be able to see it on the ground at the moment, and it'll be affecting different parts of the racetrack, I'm sure, in different ways at the moment, and also those curbs. We saw Youlden before, Luke Youlden have a spin going into turn 4. We've seen that many times. Those curbs will still have a bit of moisture on them. You wouldn't want to be touching them, certainly turning in to turn 4. So they will be keeping an eye on that. There'll be a bit on the windscreens at the moment, but it is blowing as well. Quite a lot of wind down here, so it's changing very quickly.
Yeah, it's always an interesting pocket of Melbourne, and the weather normally comes from the southwest. Strong southwest this morning, and we were talking before, Croppo and I were saying it says it's 12 degrees, but it also says it feels like 6. So it's very brisk. And to your point, that means that those curbs are going to be absolutely like grease. Lacko, good morning.
Good morning, mate. Scaife, you just made reference to normal pit reporters down on the pit lane, so where does that leave me? Don't go there. Hey, mate, but isn't it, just to go what Greg Murphy was just saying, I mean, particularly when you go up the back straight, and we remember having a bit of fun yesterday in trackside. I think it's at 275 up there. I added 10 Ks. I get excited when I get to Sandown. I think it's more like 265. But it's disconcerting because even a light shower that Greg was talking about, when you're travelling at 260, think about what that does to your windscreen. So it compounds it. And as you've got to turn in there, really brave stuff, it's really difficult to know what the grip level is. Now, I want to leave you this final note on Retro Round. As I walk past the Walkinshaw garage, mate, which has got the livery like your car used to be in there, and Robbie Starr, your old engineer, was standing in front of it. And just like when Greg Murphy put his race suit on yesterday, and I hated him for a moment, love him now, love you now, but for a moment there was some hate in the room. I said to Robbie, I used to hate you, hate Mark, and I just had a 20-year ago vision that was a bad one. Neil, you know what I'm talking about, right? You feeling the hate in the room there 20 years ago?
I have no recollection of that, Your Honour.
You do so.
It was a bit of feeling in the day. Well, we've well and truly got over it now. We're all fairly keen to succeed. You were one of those people, Larkin, so thanks for the update there. So Greg Murphy and Mark Larkin conspiring against Mark Scaife. And we've actually been doing that together for quite some time. This is car number 15 on screen here. It's the Dale Wood car of Rick Kelly, Castrol Racing Nissan Altima, and we're seeing the wind-down phase in the Virgin Australia Supercars Championship with the recent announcement on the Gold Coast that Kelly Racing will run the Ford Mustang in 2020. A little bit ironic because when you stop and consider the performance of the car, particularly at Bathurst, they've really got that car working very well at the moment, so that'll be a sad departure. And Nissan have been in the sport as a factory team on several occasions, and it'll be sad to see them go, and hopefully it's only a temporary gap in proceedings. Luke Youlden's back up and underway once more in car number 9. He'll be kicking himself for that little moment down there. When we come to this racetrack year on year, always dip our hat to the way in which it's presented. Beautifully presented facility. The grass is cut and the roses are out. Springtime in Melbourne looks absolutely fantastic. Problem is they also paint the curbs here, which means they're all glossy and nice and shiny. So in the morning, we've had a couple of spots of rain out there. You park a cold Dunlop tyre on top of those curbs, you find yourself pointing in the wrong end of the compass pretty quickly.
Exactly right. And it is a weird place. I know Larko was talking up the speed, but the reality is it is actually sometimes closer to 270 at the end of the back straight if you've got a strong tail breeze, which is actually the case today, coming from the south, and you're headed towards the north. So that tighter end at Dandenong Road is actually the northern end of the racetrack. This is the southern end of the racetrack now, so that will be a headwind down the main straight. So it'll be more like 250k at the end of the front straight, 255 maybe, and then more like 270 up the back today. And that's one of the things in terms of braking markers at this location as we ride with Luke Youlden. The braking markers shift dramatically when you've got either the tailwind or the headwind, and it can make 4 or 5 car lengths of difference in both those zones.
Looking at some of those stats around Luke Youlden here. Originally a Melbourne boy, so there'll be a bit of home-related comfort for him. These days he lives on the Gold Coast, but go back all the way to 2003, he was runner-up here with Steve Ellery. Shed pole in 2012, and last year pole sitter with David Reynolds. And there's the boys in the garage, Anton De Pasquale and David Reynolds in the Penrite racing team, and Penrite Oil Sandown 500 this weekend. So they're backers are the backers of the event. So you stop and look at his career in supercar racing. It's a pretty extraordinary set of numbers that he's got. It's his 20th Enduro campaign in any sport. That's an incredible innings, and it's the 3rd year that he's been with David Reynolds. 2 decades of being a more than reliable co-driver, and he's had a lot of success along the way. He's had 8 podiums, he's had some wins, of course, and notably that Bathurst victory in 2017 was a special moment in his career. Deja vu?
Deja vu, or just having a look. Looks good, doesn't it?
Go on, first out. Is it me? Is that me? Is that me leading?
Stop it.
To Larko's point. And we're like, ugh, not again. Jack Perkins on screen in car 22. He shares with James Courtney in the winning appliances and appliances online. Walkinshaw Andretti United entries. It's Ryan on the right-hand side there from the engine department at Walkinshaw's together with James Courtney. And they do look great. So this is a reflection of the livery that Craig Lowndes and Mark Scaife put to very good use back in the late 90s. Stole all the trophies. They weren't proper socialists. They didn't share them around at all.
It's not a very nice description, Neil.
Could have just given 1 or 2 to Larko or I just for fun.
Well, we tried to a couple of times.
Balance, don't you reckon, Greg?
Mate, I love the way Scaife sort of has that laugh when he goes, oh, stop it when we're talking about him.
Yeah.
He wants us to keep talking about him, obviously. Hey, Barry Ryan just watches the Penrite car comes in of Luke Youlden. Amazing livery, incredible livery. Was this your idea, or how did this come about? Because it's obviously reminiscent of some wonderful days back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it's actually been a Toby Diamond thing from Penrite for the last few years, that he's really wanted that livery from the start, and eventually it takes a long time to get all the sponsors on board to want to have gold logos. So eventually we got to a point where we got a good relationship with all our sponsors, and they were all happy to do it, and it looks fantastic. Yeah.
It absolutely looks fantastic. Hey, just talking about this weather, it's obviously very fickle at the moment. Have you guys gone about changing any plans based on the fact we might not get another dry session today? Are you focused on this one to get as many laps and learn as much as you can, doing things you might not have done with the co-driver?
No, not really. We're just stuck to a plan. Like, it wasn't going to rain, then if it rains we'll put wets on, so it's pretty basic. Yeah.
You're a very basic man.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, shout out to Jim Richards too for helping us out with. We had his BMW down the shop the other night. It was just fantastic to have him involved and have a bit of a chat to all our sponsors as well. So.
Amazing memories. It would have been pretty special for everybody in that room, and someone like you as well, who would have been sitting there on the couch way back when, you know, dreaming about being involved.
Yeah, probably. I was racing motorbikes back then, so I didn't really care about cars.
It's enough from Murph. Let's talk about Jimmy Richards. So that livery, great tradition. Little dive up the inside. Ooh, that was nasty. That could have been a touch there. Prema was a long way down the inside. Let's go on board and have a look. Because he's moved it over to the inside. And He's just about to get it turned in. And Stevie Richards doesn't give him enough road. And often you can actually run around the outside there and be on the inside for turn 2. So it's not a bad ploy. So he's just rehearsing it a little bit. That'll be one of the moves that you'll see on Sunday.
But you don't want to be the guy in the garage that puts the first scratch on the brand new car.
No.
So if you're Alex Premer, much better that Scott McLaughlin does that.
Exactly.
And you don't have to come back and sheepishly explain why you got to do a battle with Stephen Richards turn 1 in practice 1 on Friday at Sandown. These colours that both Tim Slade and his co-driver are displaying this weekend in Ash Walsh represent and there's Tim up on screen, represent the Aussie male colours of Brad Jones and John Bowe back in the day. So those guys have broken out some of their old livery, and Kim Jones in the background there, in behind Tim. It was a pretty tough weekend for Ash at Bathurst, and wasn't a great weekend for them on the Gold Coast either. On Sunday, it wasn't too bad. On the Saturday, they got into the top 10. You mentioned before when we were up in the host studio, Mark, this is one of your favourite liveries because it's paying homage to Alan Moffat's Coca-Cola Trans Am Mustang from the late 60s, a car that has an extraordinary record in the history of Australian motorsport, and a beautiful car. And I reckon if you had to sort of absolutely pinpoint your favourite car of the entire era, if it's not at the top of most people's list, it'd be very, very close to it. 80th birthday this Sunday for Alan George Moffat, and expectations are that he'll be here this weekend. So I know Larry Perkins, Fred Gibson, Alan Moffat are planning on coming out, so it'd be nice to say hello to those folks. But great for everybody at Tickford to be able to celebrate those colours and those cars. And big recovery weekend in store for those guys at car number 55 as well, when you stop and think about what happened to them at the Gold Coast. That's a bit ordinary, isn't it, when you see that on the edge of the road? You just want to be a little bit cautious of that.
So you can just see them run slightly inside. So the normal line there is right on that yellow line. All the drivers there running roughly 300 mil or 400 mil further to their left.
Actually, while we were looking at this area of the racetrack, I thought it's probably prudent for us to expand a little bit on what's happened up there. And after we have a look at this replay, in fact, you can see a bit of it to the right in any case. So this is Garth Tanner on the run down into the left-hander at Dandenong Road. He's got the rear brakes just locked, and he plays catch. Sprint cars out the other side, gets those tyres dirty. So that new section, the runoff section, is, as a result, what we're looking at the moment of a huge amount of work and a huge investment by, and lots of people have worked pretty hard to change it, because it's been a location over the years that's caused a fair bit of trauma and damage.
Certainly has been, and congratulations to everybody at Supercars and IADM and CAMS. The Melbourne Racing Club have done a tremendous job. Roughly $1 million, a little bit under $1 million spent on that area. And we've seen, as you said, Neil, some horrific crashes in that zone. So as you can see, that's been dragged right back in terms of runoff area. The angle has basically made much more of a wedge effect. So it used to fall off and go downhill into the grass. So the way that the cars can retard themselves with a much longer runoff area have been beautifully done. And congratulations to everybody, especially the Melbourne Racing Club, for putting all that together. And they were able to solidify their FIA Grade 3 licence, which gives Sandown the longevity it requires as a racing facility.
So hopefully we're going to continue to race here for a long time to come, which would be great news for many supercar and motorsport fans generally. And with the new debris fence at the back there, there's also still a great vantage point, because I can remember as a kid standing here, the old South Pacific Touring Car Championship, when Brock and Bond had those silver Tiranas and there were Chargers out there, and Moffat was here with the Falcons and what have you, standing up the back there, and it was a great place to watch. Certainly in the modern era, it was back then too, but to watch our cars arrive at full tilt. So huge amount of work, and to everybody involved in that, including yourself, Mark, congratulations.
Yeah, well done, Scafie. I know you've been putting your work into that. I'm fascinated, though. I can't wait to see a little bit of data to see if it's going to have an impact as to how drivers attack that part of the circuit, whether they're a little bit more committed. But more so, I think we're going to see a few more side-by-side battles going into there come Sunday's race.
Yeah, you might be right. So the actual corner hasn't changed. But what Larko's referring to is the optics of the corner looks different when you get there, because it used to have a big wall that was much closer to you, and a large amount of asphalt that's between the racetrack. Whoa, big slide there by Moffat. That looks good, but the stopwatch doesn't like it. So, as you said before, it's a beautiful livery. And there's some really close times. We're just having a look there at the moment. So Tander was the fastest. Thomas Randall went to the top. Jack Perkins is now the top. Have a look at this slide. So turns it in. There's a change of surface on the right-hand section. Gets a turn, bumps the curb a little bit hard. In the throttle, doesn't give the throttle away, and uses a lot of the concrete fringe that's behind the exit curb there, which as the weekend goes on, more rubber goes down and that becomes slightly better in terms of grip. Now this is this really dangerous little section just there. He was quite wide and that's made him understeer. So that actually will have been a breach. All four wheels across the yellow line, and that will have been a breach.
And that is going to happen ad nauseum through the weekend, particularly if there's a little bit of that water on the approach, because it triggers the initial lack of bite in the front end, so a little bit of push or understeer in the car. And you saw James quite graphically run wide down there. And if we were to freeze frame that car in the middle of the curb at turn 7, you'll see that all four of those wheels and tyres are on the incorrect side of the line, Greg.
Yep, the man of the moment after the Gold Coast, Scott McLaughlin. How are you feeling first and foremost, mate? Everything sort of coming together. I mean, it was a massive impact that you had.
Yeah, I've had enough time to think about it, and I'm happy. I'm ready to go. I just can't wait to get back in the car. It was so good to get back in on Monday and just get on with things. But yeah, my biggest impact on my career, and just happy to walk away and very grateful that these cars are as safe as they are.
What kind of therapy have you been having on a regular basis since then?
Just physio and chiro and stuff like that, regular checks up with my GP and all that sort of stuff. But I was pretty good. It was all about sort of just resting and stuff, and trying to get the body back into somewhat of a normal fashion. So I think it was like 3.5 ton worth of force that went through the body, so it's a lot of force.
We've seen some teams do some miraculous things in the last few months. Obviously from Bathurst there was a few rebuilds as well, new cars. Again, your team's come to the party with that one and built you a brand new car. How is it?
Yeah, unbelievable. It's brand new from the ground up. Every nut, bolt, line, everything in there is brand new. Which it was nice to do the shakedown to make sure everything was running right electronically, especially. But the job that these guys done was fantastic, and just going in there and just seeing the guys while they're doing it, the energy was up too, and it was just really good vibe. So when you have the team behind you like that as a driver, it's the best feeling ever.
And it looked like Alex was about to give it its first scratch, I believe, down the inside of turn 1.
I said, leave that to me. Leave that to me. I'll feed a few blokes.
Thanks, bro.
No worries.
Yeah, I reckon that's exactly right. Scotty can get away with it. He's got a bit of credit with the team. He's the reigning champion, and his numbers so far in our championship season are pretty impressive, aren't they, with 16 Armour All poles and 18 victories. But for Alex, much better to be able to hand it off to him and go, you scratch it.
Just sprinkling now. So just saw the little witness marks of some water on the windscreen.
Rain on the front straight now, rain on the front straight.
Rain on the front straight, exactly. So be very careful. This place changes so much. In fact, the grip level between turn 1 and into turn 2, turn 3 is the lowest of the year.
Yeah, you're right, Scafey. It was sprinkling on and off throughout this session, but it has certainly just got heavier in probably the last 2 minutes. Definitely in pit lane, the rain is falling.
Thanks, Brianna. Good morning.
What year was it that we all arrived down there after it had been resurfaced, and it was like it turned into soapy water down there? I know, I reckon I've never seen so many skilled individuals in high-speed racing cars fly into the weeds at 250 kilometres an hour in my life, myself included.
Yeah.
Remember that year?
All of us. I can't remember. Basically, all of us were off. Yeah.
It's just, I went down there at one stage and thought, this has got to be as late as you can brake, and somebody went past me at 100 knots faster, and I went, wow, it's brave. And then the last I saw it was just like this giant blur of mud. So it gets incredibly slippery down there, Larko. You would have speed
Yeah,
off.
Neil, I think it was me. And the other thing I'm laughing about, I'm just looking at him. Remember, we used to start the race just out here in front of the pit where I am here. And so by the time you got down to turn 1, everyone was doing 200 Ks an hour. Remember the year we all crashed into each other at the start down there? Except for Mark, he was out and he was gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, guy we wanted to talk to, Scotty McLaughlin we heard from. Scotty's got a new car. You probably didn't hear him. Chaz, you know he's got a new car. He got a chance to run it in check everything's systems are okay. Your car, you've dragged out of the corner of the workshop. You haven't had the same privilege.
Yeah, look, we're obviously pretty lucky with the wild card this year, and Randall ran this car at Taylor Bend. So, you know, the guys are pretty good here at Tickford. They're good at bolting parts back into the car that sits in the corner, and it runs pretty smoothly. So we've had to do it a few times at Tickford, and, you know, most times it runs pretty smoothly.
I guess just to keep Chaz Mostert fans engaged, mate, and there's plenty of them, a car doesn't turn to elastic. It doesn't sort of break down and fall apart and corrode. It gets parked in a corner because the car's evolved, little things change, but you should be reasonably confident you can get back into this car. You'll have your engines put back in there, current engines. Shouldn't really change much, right?
Yeah, look, it's most of the cars across our whole fleet haven't really changed too much over the years. Like you said, there's some little upgrades, you know, new driver ergonomics, they might change a little bit through the years, but this car's basically the same as my last one. My last year's car, the car crashed at Gold Coast, is basically 3-year-old, so it wasn't a brand new chassis. It's no different than this one sitting here.
Okay, and as they push it out, look at that black stripe behind the 55. That's what signifies Moffat Mustang. Thumbs up.
Beautiful bit of kit, that thing, wasn't it? Thanks, Larko and Chaz. Good to have him back. All good and ship-shape ready for today. You were just making the point while the interview was taking place, Mark, about the crazy margins, and this is a really good sign for us for later in the weekend, because we're going to see not only this session today, but another co-driver session later. But the co-drivers play a huge role here because the minimum driver requirement on Sunday is greater than a load of fuel. Yep. So they've got to play the co-drivers into the race further than they might otherwise like to do. But your point, which is really key here, is you go well beyond the top 10 before you creep outside 0.2 of a second.
Exactly, and 19 cars, Croppo, within half a second. So have a look down to Luff there, 0.5, 19 cars. Just amazingly close. So this really bodes well. The other thing that I was just talking about a second ago was have a look at this new mad steering wheel of Lowndes and Whincup. It's got the GT spec. So when you get a big handful of opposite lock, you've got a big hole there.
Fresh air.
That's right.
Don't let go.
That's right. Do not let go. Should have a big sign there. Do not let go of that thing. But they're experimenting with it. Lowndes now riding behind his old mate, Stephen Richards.
Means getting in and out's a little easier, obviously without the base in the wheel, but it also means visibility around the instrumentation is easy as well, and that's often the reason why the drivers like it. But to your point, it means that you're clamped in the 3 and 9 position on the steering wheel, because that's all there is. Whoa! Richo. And he's come...
He backed it off because he knew Richo was going to come back on, didn't he?
Well, yeah, they were teammates last year, and you know, busy holding trophies and kissing babies and shaking hands. It wouldn't go down well if all of a sudden Craig speared into him in the middle of all that. So nice save by both of the drivers, really. A great presence of mind when you stop and think about the experience that they've got. Really probably comes to no surprise. Richo's had enough of that. Come in. Let's have a look at some data and have a chat about the car. So that disconnected quite nasty at the end of the back straight for Stephen Richards. So Craig Lowndes at the moment, sorry Mark, is in 15th position.
And I was just about to make the point that that was a 10-4. Now he had a little back off because of Richo disappearing at turn 6 and had to release the throttle and make sure that he could come back onto the road. But the reality is it's about a second and a half. That little bit of a drizzle that Rihanna reported. Door open here, this is an interesting one. We've had a lot of that lately, haven't we? Yeah. Very weird. So Dean Canto in Macaulay Jones' BJR Commodore, and again, that's another one of them. Rihanna?
Yeah, they've just had that car into the lane as we had that rain down. They've just actually taped that door up and sent it back out. So you'll, if we get another shot of it, you'll see there's a fair bit of tape down the side of that car.
It's interesting because I don't think I've seen it, I might be wrong, but I don't think I've seen it with the Mustang, but we've seen it with several of the Commodores this year. It almost in, you know, we talked at the last event at the Gold Coast about the things you've got to be prepared for in the garage to mitigate the weird stuff that happens, because it's all fine and dandy to go chasing a 100th of a second, but some of the things that can delay you in these motor races are anything but scientific, i.e. So, you know, you just wonder whether or not there needs to be a better solution that the driver can enact if all of a sudden you've got troubles with the door. Shane Van Gisbergen had it at Bathurst. Yep. Forgotten who it was at the Gold Coast, but yeah.
Courtney and Perkins, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, I think it was. And then, you know, having to come in and have race tape applied is not the solution because of the transit time in the pit lane and the time it takes to rectify.
Yeah.
You just... in fact, I'd need to look at the rule book to figure out what you could or couldn't do in that regard, but there must be something weird going on with the latches or some other bizarre reason. I'll try and find out a bit more about that one.
Remember that mad 2003 race where the rear door come open on our cars? Tander goes to the top with an 815, and we were black flag. We had to come in late in the race. And Tony Longhurst said, why don't you just have an hockey strap hooked up between the two rear doors, which was actually quite clever. That's all you actually needed.
That's sort of what I mean.
And we had it forever. So from that year on, it was basically installed on a Saturday night that you had a big strap between those two rear doors to ensure that didn't happen again.
So in terms of speed, Tander's just done that 8-1, jumping back on for the replay with Craig Lowndes at 2, 3 and 4. See the amount of curve they take here, and that outside curve is super slippery, and actually rotated it. So he joins Luke Youlden pointing in the wrong direction there. So right now he'd be begging for a bit more steering wheel.
Exactly. He had fresh air going then. He went for another armful of lock, and he had fresh air. Hard to get used to simple things like that inside the car. So sideways, he had it gathered, and then it bolted on him. And as he tried to grab it the second time, he actually had an armful of lock, went to the top of the wheel, and there was fresh air. There was nothing to hang on to. So that's a bit of a difficult one there for Lowndes.
So that took about 100 odd metres to fully play out. And that curb is ultra slippery today. Here's the replay. Watch his hands, folks. This is 2. Use a heap of curb. 3. Another heap of curb. Then he parks the rear wheel in the wrong spot on the curb. Watch his hands. And right there, there's a moment where it's all fresh air because he goes looking for first gear. And then it's like, oh, yeah, there it is. So that when you've been doing something that's muscle memory for 25 odd years, it's a bit hard to adjust to that. In the old 00 cars, we also had a wheel that had a portion of it missing. So it's not the first time that he's driven a touring car that's had an unusual wheel in it. And same troubles here for Ash in car 14, Ash Walsh. So they're all making the mistake of thinking it's dried up a little bit down there and rubbering up and safe to park the car on, because the normal turn-in point for turn 4 at Sandown is to park the car on the ramp of the curb and give yourself the most amount of turn-in space. But right at the moment, it's a bit diabolical down there. So nice shot, James Moffat, with the fresh air under there. Tander is the fastest at the end of the session from Bryce Fullwood, who continues to impress in the Nissan in car number 7, Dale Wood in position number 3. So Nissan's second and third, continuing the fine form that we saw particularly at Bathurst. That was a nice shot of James Moffat, who wound up in 7th position. Speed-wise, practice record here, Win Cup a 7.8, quality record, Win Cup also in the 7.8s, and the lap record, Win Cup 9.2. So when you look at the time that Garth just achieved out there at an 8 flat, that's a pretty decent opening account considering the conditions where there's a little bit of water on the racetrack and a fairly gnarly breeze out there at the moment that would make it tricky with a crosswind on both the straights. So nice work, Tander, Fullwood, Dale Wood, Warren Luff, Jack Perkins, Tony D'Alberto, James Moffat, Luke Youlden, Dean Fiore, Alex Davis in the 10. Alex Kremer just outside, brings it back without a scratch. And then Thomas Randall, Michael Caruso, Will Brown, Chris Pither, Craig Lowndes in 16th. Walsh, Rouleau, Blanchard, Muscat, together with Canto, Smith, Webb, Richards and Kostecki. 25 cars in the field, 50 drivers, and we'll see the primary drivers up next a bit later in the day.
And continuing where he left off a couple of weeks ago at the top of the timesheets. The last time around it was a win on the Gold Coast. Practice 1 here at Sandown, mate. Give us your first impressions of the track, obviously getting out there with all this new surfacing and obviously the reprofiling down at Turn 6 as well.
Yeah, I raced here a couple of months ago in GT and TCR, and they've done a little bit of resurfacing, but they've done a lot more since then. Right. So 11 and 12, with that resurfacing there, it's crazy how quick you can go through there. So readjusting the brain for that. It'd be cool if they resurfaced the whole joint, it'd be awesome. But yeah, car's good. Made a couple of changes through the session and just bettered all the brakes for Shane, you know, co-driver life.
Oh, co-driver life at the top of the timesheets on an 8.0. That's not bad. Just give us your thoughts on that visualisation going into Turn 6, though, now. I mean, we used to have such a different look at it. I mean, the optics, as Scafey said before, of it were very different. What's it like now? Does it change sort of the way you approach that corner?
Yeah, 100% changes your reference. And actually racing here a couple of months ago really helped with that. So, yeah, so you just, obviously all your reference points are different. I mean, you can go heaps deeper there now because you know that it's not grass out on the exit. So if you make a mistake and understeer wide, you know you've got tarmac there to catch you. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Certainly a good thing if you're a car owner, it saves you a lot of money. But as a driver, you want that commitment, that type of corner where you really want that commitment. But I think they've done a good job with it. Yeah, it's all good.
Once it upwards. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Dale Wood, it looks like you've been doing your squats here. You've got the padding in the bum there. Nice job for the first practice session here this morning.
And I'm a big Beyonce fan. So this is the closest I'm going to get. So I have to make up for Rick's lanky legs. So no, the car was really good straight out the box. So very happy with that. Wasn't really sure if we were going to get rain or dry, or it kept threatening to do a bit of both. But I thought the car was really nice out the box.
What were the conditions like out there? There's obviously been a couple of changes with the surfacing and obviously the extension on the track there.
There's a lot of grip through turn 1 and there's a lot of grip over the top. And it's kind of nice to know you've got that extra bit of runoff room over the top. That's always the bit that sort of stops you from maybe going the whole hog over there. So I really like the track. I like what they've done with the resurfacing. Maybe if they a little bit more, we could resurface the whole thing next year and it'll be a very fast track. But it was good fun then. Yeah, I really liked it.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate your thoughts. We'll see if we can just quickly come and grab Bryce Fullwood. Bryce, you're on a roll at you're on a roll at the moment, doing really nice things in Dunlop Super 2 and of course in the Supercars Championship. Nice way to start the morning.
Yeah, look, bit of a surprise, obviously. Really good way to start the weekend here for Andre and myself. It's been a fairly tough enduro campaign for us, which has been a bit disappointing because I feel like, we've got so much potential and so much to show, and unfortunately haven't got anything to show for it. So, yeah, really looking forward to this weekend.
Keeping yourself nice and busy as well this weekend. Got the double duties happening. Your focus, obviously, on trying to wrap that championship up in Dunlop Super 2, but of course trying to get the job done here as well.
Yeah, exactly right. Obviously, very important weekend in both cars. It's a little bit different. I mean, for me, I guess it's easy. I just put one suit on and then just concentrate on that car, and then put the next suit on and concentrate on that car. So, I'm pretty confident in Andre and Dylan here. They're pretty good at setting that car up on the main series car. So I give my feedback, but more or less leave that down to them, and then I just drive what I get dished up, and then, I suppose have a lot of input in my Super 2 car and try and get that car going well. But yeah, look, very good way to start the weekend.
Thanks, Bryce. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Alexander Prema, now a Bathurst champion, mate. Phil Honoured standing next to you. Great international pedigree, but I just noticed they're using that pedigree for feedback from a brand new car. You're very animated talking to the engineers here after driving the new car, so we're keen to hear how is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. Yeah, like all the European drivers, yeah, they're always talking with their hands and stuff like this, yeah, so which is pretty cool. But car feels pretty good, honestly. Yeah, I mean, straight off the box, yeah. Car is braking straight, good on the brakes on the high-speed corner, like turn 6, yeah, the car looks pretty hooked, and pretty happy about the first run on the new car.
So I'm interested in your take on turn 6, because when Greg Murphy and I drove around yesterday, visually we were blown away how different it looked. So when you're approaching it at 265, does it change for you?
No, honestly, it doesn't change so much, because you have so much focus on your braking point, and as soon as you I mean, I don't want to say hit the brakes, but you're looking at the curb, and yeah, this is the vision that what you're looking, especially ahead, like turning left. So all the things that what happened on the right, what they change, you don't notice much. For sure, after that, if you go a little bit wider, I mean, you can see that more security, because you can go wider on the off track, which is like tarmac, which is better than the grass, what we had in the previous year. But yeah, after that, that turn is going to be even faster than last year, because especially the first surface is very flat, so the car doesn't bottom as the previous years.
I reckon you're right. I reckon we're going to see some great battles going in there. Best of luck.
You're welcome.
And I got some difficult news to explain to everybody. We had some news come through yesterday that our great friend Mike Raymond passed away. Apologise about the state of my voice.